Hi there, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. My name is Lynn and I pulled us a daily card. So the card that came out is After the Storm, and this is from the Sacred Rebels Oracle deck in case you're interested. So the message with this card is, some of you may have been carrying emotional pressure, frustration, disappointment, fear, anger, confusion, grief, or exhaustion for longer than you realize. Something may have been building beneath the surface until it could no longer remain exactly as it was. But the message with this card is, the important part is that the storm isn't the punishment. The storm isn't the punishment. Okay? The storm is the release. Okay? After the storm, a period of tension, upheaval, or emotional clearing is either happening now or has happened recently, and it is ultimately making room for something healthier and more authentic. The storm is a necessary release of accumulated energy, followed by relief, freedom, a renewed perspective, and hope. Okay? Just think about what happens during an actual storm. The air becomes heavy, pressure builds, the sky becomes dark, everything feels unsettled, and then the storm finally breaks, and the air feels different. Things are clearer now. The atmosphere feels lighter. You can breathe again. That's the metaphor of this card. Okay? The storm is the release. What this card is saying is that essentially, sometimes life has to disrupt an old pattern before something new can emerge. And the storm brings accumulated energy to the surface so that it can finally move through you rather than remain trapped. If you're currently going through a difficult period, then the message with this card is, don't assume that because things feel chaotic right now that you're going in the wrong direction. Okay? You know, when you're in the middle of a storm, you can't see the blue sky after. You can only see when you're in the middle of a storm, or you're in the middle of, if you're going through a difficult period right now, maybe the only thing you can see is uncertainty, or the only thing you feel is uncertainty or conflict, emotional intensity. Maybe things are changing or things are ending, or there's been some uncomfortable truths or things you can no longer tolerate. Maybe people are revealing themselves, or situations aren't working anymore. Certain situations aren't working anymore. Or maybe for some of you, old emotions are coming back. Or some of you may have the feeling that you don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe you're experiencing this temporary turbulence. What Spirit is saying is that with this card, something can be falling apart because it has finished serving you. Could be a thought, it could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be a bunch of different things. That doesn't mean every painful situation is automatically meant to be. This card is encouraging you to look at what the upheaval is revealing and what it's clearing away. What is this upheaval revealing to you, and what is it clearing away? If you've been holding everything inside, then this card is really important for you. If you've been keeping the peace, swallowing your feelings, suppressing anger, pretending something doesn't bother you, or if you've been carrying emotional pressure for too long, this message is for you. Eventually, something has to give. Maybe you've reached a point where you think you can't keep doing this anymore, and that moment can feel frightening. But this card says that there can be tremendous liberation in finally acknowledging what you actually feel. You don't have to explode, you don't have to destroy everything, you don't have to make a dramatic decision, but you do need to stop pretending that something doesn't affect you when it does. Okay? Sometimes we have to be really, really honest with ourselves, raw with ourselves. In this situation, the storm may be your emotional truth demanding to be acknowledged. Is there a storm going on in your life right now? It could be a relationship. Maybe you're seeing someone differently. Maybe something you tolerated for a long time has become intolerable now. Maybe you're realizing that you need boundaries, or you're discovering that a relationship needs to change because the old dynamic isn't healthy anymore. And this could also represent a family situation. Old family wounds can sometimes resurface when you're finally strong enough to confront them. The storm can bring buried resentment, sadness, anger, or disappointment to the surface. Bringing something into the light gives you the opportunity to finally deal with it. This card could also represent your identity. Sometimes the storm isn't about another person at all. Maybe you're becoming someone different. Maybe you're asking, like, who are you now? What do you actually want? What are you no longer willing to accept? Why have you been living this certain way? And those questions create an internal upheaval, but they can also be the beginning of freedom. The card is not called the storm, it's called after the storm, okay? So the emphasis is on what comes after the upheaval. So this card is about relief, clarity, renewed energy, perspective, hope, and then a new direction. The storm eventually passes. And when it does, you realize you couldn't see it while you were in it, but the experience changed you. And now you're becoming less willing to abandon yourself. You've become clearer about your boundaries. You recognize what actually matters. You stop chasing things that continually exhaust you. You become more comfortable trusting your own intuition. And you don't return to exactly who you were before the storm. You've learned something. And the owl in the picture is important too. As the owl is associated with seeing what is immediately obvious. And it can be in the darkness. Seeing what is immediately obvious, particularly in darkness. So when you're in the storm, you don't have all the answers. You may not be able to see the entire path ahead, but you don't necessarily need to. You only need enough clarity to take it to the next step. So the owl represents the ability to see through the darkness. So if you're feeling like you don't know what's going to happen, then the answer is you don't have to know everything yet. So trust in divine timing. This is a very encouraging card with regards to emotional healing. You're reaching a point where old emotional energy is finally being processed rather than suppressed. Sometimes healing doesn't feel peaceful at first. Sometimes healing looks like anger, crying, remembering, questioning, finally saying no, recognizing unhealthy patterns, grieving what you wished something could have been, becoming disappointed in someone, accepting reality, or realizing you deserve something different. And that can feel like a storm. But the storm is not evidence that you're getting worse. Sometimes it's evidence that something that has been buried is finally moving. And this card can also indicate that a relationship is going through a clearing period. For some of you, it represents a difficult period that ultimately clears the air and allows a relationship to become more honest. It can also represent recognizing that a relationship has become unhealthy and having the courage to stop participating in the old dynamic. Something about the existing relationship dynamic needs to change. So the storm exposes what isn't working. And what happens afterward depends upon what both people are willing to do with that truth. With regards to your career and finances, this card can represent a period where things have felt unstable or uncertain. Maybe plans have changed. Maybe something didn't work out the way you expected. Maybe you've been questioning whether you're on the right path. But this card says that temporary instability doesn't necessarily equal failure. Sometimes a disruption forces you to reconsider a direction that wasn't actually right for you. The opportunity may come after the disruption rather than before it. And spiritually, this card is about surrendering the illusion that you have to control every stage of the process. If you're asking what's going to happen, then this card is encouraging you just to trust that you don't need to see the entire picture. The storm is part of the cycle. Don't interpret every difficult moment as a sign that you've been abandoned or that you've made the wrong choice. Sometimes you're just moving through a transition. So something you've been carrying has reached its limit. The pressure is being released so you can stop living from an old emotional pattern. Don't fear the clearing. What comes after can be much lighter than what you've been carrying. You don't have to force the storm to stop. Let what needs to come up, come up. Let what needs to be acknowledged, be acknowledged. Let what needs to leave, leave. Let yourself feel what you actually feel. Then allow the sky to clear. This card is ultimately about renewal after upheaval, not destruction. The clearing can create space for a fresher perspective and a more hopeful future. This difficult period is not the end of your story. Something is being cleared, released, and transformed. Don't mistake the storm for your destination. Keep your confidence. Let the old energy move through and prepare for the clarity that comes when the sky finally clears, okay? A difficult chapter is ending. Release the past, heal, and trust that brighter, calmer days are coming. So that is your message for today. Thank you so much for letting me channel this message. I'm sending you lots of love and strength. Take good care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.